Hey, I just wanted to show off this release because I think it is my favorite vinyl release of all time. It is the Art Devo collection. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be a pun on Art Deco or Art Nouveau, maybe. But I've been a Devo fan for about 20 years, and I would say specifically I'm a fan of the 70s Devo, and really the earlier the better. And Devo is a band that has had a lot of live recordings from the 70s floating around there. They've had a lot of demos that have been kind of just out there in the scene. And then there's been the hardcore Devo releases, volume 1 and 2, which I have here. These were released in 1990. And these are all demo recordings from, this is April 1974 to December of 1977. And these were really great. These specific ones are actually 2014 re-releases from Superior Viaduct Records. But also around that time in the early 90s, which is kind of when the band was breaking up, they released those. They also released this live The Mongoloid Years, which is really cool. This used to be probably my favorite release of theirs, because if you could see, it has Max's Kansas City show from 1977. That's kind of a famous show that's been re-released a few times since then. It has The Crypt from 1976, which is really interesting because as far as I know, there's not a lot of recordings from 1976 out there. This is the only one I know of. And I've always kind of questioned that date because I don't know, they're just playing very fast. And, you know, there's a February 1977 recording that's an unofficial release where they're playing very slow. And I've always heard that, like, they went off to New York City and they came back playing fast. So I don't really know what the deal with that is. Maybe somebody knows. I've never heard anybody talk about that, but either way, it's a really cool recording. And then the best part of this is the 1975 Halloween show, which is kind of an infamous show where they were opening for Sun Ra and just kind of played obnoxiously. Allegedly, the Jocko Homo recording on this went on for like 20 minutes or something, and then they cut it down for this CD. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's just really fun, and it's probably the most hardcore show you can hear from Devo. And it's just really, it's kind of amazing that recording survives and was officially released. But back to this Art Devo collection, it really could be considered a hardcore volume 3. But I think the reason they didn't go that route is because it doesn't really fall in line with those tracks. I feel like these over here, they probably came from, like, 4-track recordings made in Akron, Ohio. Maybe these came from 2 or 3 sources. I'm not really sure about that. But this is just kind of all over the place. It ranges from 1973 to 77. And the stuff that's on here is there's a mix of, like, really crazy live recordings, and then just demos of songs that nobody has heard before or even, knew existed, or, there's titles on here that nobody knew what to expect when they saw this. And it's just a real gem. And, this is from Futurismo, and they've done a lot of great releases over the years. Yeah, so Futurismo's first big release for Devo was this Miracle Witness Hour. And it was, they say, Devo's most intimate, unreleased live record ever. And it was really cool. This was from, I believe, May of 1977. And this recording was out there. And really, I don't think this is that much better quality than that. But the recording that was out there was really good already. And they actually removed some tracks. So this release probably could have been better, but I really love the tracks that they chose are about the best ones they could have, and some of the ones that they didn't choose had some damage to them in the recording that's out there. So I kind of get it, but came on a really cool die cut, kind of folded sleeve. So for a long time, this was my favorite vinyl I had, because it was the earliest live recording of Devo that was out there, officially released on vinyl, as far as I know. It would be cool if someday they would put out the Mongoloid Years on vinyl, maybe if they found the rest of that 1975 show, or maybe the rest of that 76 show. They did release the Max's Kansas City show on Record Store Day a few years ago. They also put out Easy Listening Music, which, you know, not something I listen to all the time, but it is a really cool package. Easy Listening Music is these are like the Muzak versions of their songs that they would play before concerts. And I think they sold it on cassette back in the day, like mail order. So that was cool that they re-released that maybe 5 or 6 years ago. They also put out Total Devo in a really nice package. This one came on red and blue vinyl. There's a few other extras in there, I think, like postcards and stuff. Total Devo, you know, a pretty good, not a bad album. It was their penultimate, and it's okay. And then they also put out Smooth Noodle Maps, which I think most people would agree is not their strongest album, probably their weakest, from 1990, and that was right as the band was breaking up. Again, a really cool release though, and I really wish that they could like do some other studio albums justice like this, because these all have you have the different alternate mixes and demos, which, you know, for Smooth Noodle Maps, like nobody was asking for this, and it got such a cool release. It's just, I love it, and it just makes me mad that I get why, because these two albums are I don't even know what label they're on, but they're not on Warner Brothers. This says Boogie Boy Records, but all the Warner Brothers albums are, I believe, still with Warner Brothers, and they have not done any sort of special fancy releases of those. But yeah, you can see the alternate versions on here. I really wish they would have done the German version of Baby Doll that was in, I can't remember. I think it was on Tapeheads. Really funny version. But anyway, that brings us to Art Devo. Oh, they also put out, pretty relevant to this, is they put out Recumbo DNA, which was a Rhino release from the early 2000s, I want to say. And it was kind of a collection of demos from their whole career, but I would say it was mostly focusing on like 80s demos. But the good thing about that is, or the best thing about that release is they were generally in chronological order, and I think one of the earlier tracks, like they had a really good recording of The Words Get Stuck in My Throat, which doesn't really get released that often, and then also Recumbo DNA, which I think until that release had never been heard of before then. And it's just a really great recording from the 70s, and it's one of my favorite songs of theirs. And I don't really know what the story with that song is, why it never made it onto an album, or why they never really played it live. Although there was a bootleg that hit YouTube a year or two ago that contained Recumbo DNA, which was really surprising to see, because I think, as far as I know, that's the only known recording of that song except for the demo version. But they re-released that on vinyl a few years ago, and it was super expensive, probably over $100 for a triple album. And I just couldn't I couldn't justify that. It's a lot of those later demos I don't really care too much about. Yeah, so that brings us to Art Devo, and this was like $130, which was hard to justify, but you know, like I said, this is my bread and butter when it comes to Devo. And this was a project put together, I believe the guy's name is Peter Konheim, who, if I'm not mistaken, he was in the band Negative Land and is kind of an archivist and restoration expert these days. And the work he did on this is kind of crazy. I don't know where they got all these tapes. I think from Mark Mothersbaugh's archives at Mutato Musica or whatever he has going on there, and there's just really crazy stuff in here. So I'll do a quick overview of the contents. First, you've got these. It's kind of like a booklet, but they're not bound. They kind of made it like they're numbered, like they're art exhibits or like auction exhibits. And that's the same thing with the discs. They label them as Exhibit A, Exhibit B instead of Side A, Side B. So there's some credits. There's a really good unboxing from Michael Pilmer if anybody is curious. This is a scratch and sniff image, which I can smell right now, but I did scratch it and it kind of took like a sheen off of there, so I have not scratched it again. It's not the best smelling thing. No back on that. Some really cool imagery on here that has not been seen before. Like this Devo Mind Blowers, that's where they got the cover from, that logo. Oh, you can't actually see it there. I think that's really cool. I thought they came up with that for this album, but apparently this was a like unreleased. It says artwork for early demo recording Mind Blowers from 1973, which is just, you know, the first album came out in 78. But they go way back. There's some liner notes from Jerry. Some old photos. Some artwork from Mark. There's a picture from My Struggle, the book that Mark put out as Boogie Boy. Then there's some liner notes from Mark. What I wish was in this is some sort of listing track by track. I really like when kind of rarities releases do that. They didn't really do it on hardcore either. But if you go look at something like the Beatles anthology, which I know it's the Beatles, I mean, they're going to have the most detail on every single thing possible. But, you know, all you get on this is there's a little note here about where something was recorded. And then some of these just have like live at JB 76, early version, you know, recorded at Harlan Hall, recorded at Greenwood, but that's, you know, Kent Cove 74. That's about all you get though. Whereas if you look at the Beatles anthology, if you get those CDs or probably the vinyl too, there's a really great booklet that comes with them, and kind of all the tracks are, I believe, in chronological order, and they're ordered in a really sensible way. And then you could sit there and read through the book. There's like a paragraph for each track with notes from the Beatles and all that. And it's really fun to just sit there and listen through it and read through it at the same time. So I really wish there was something like this, but I kind of get it because I think Mark just like dumped a bunch of tapes on Peter Konheim, and he went through and found the best stuff out of them, the best sounding and just the coolest tracks. And they put it together the best they could, but I think a lot of that stuff is unknown where it actually comes from. So onto the discs, there are 3 of them. Each one has a track listing. I got the nuclear rubber color. There was a gold version as well, and I think another color. The gold one was numbered and more exclusive. There's all 4 of those. This was the sticker that was on the front of it. And then there's also this like bonus 45, which is not colored, although if you get the gold version, I believe it is colored gold. But this is really cool. I'll talk about it at the end. But that's what you get inside. And now let's talk a little bit about the contents, which I might be able to zoom in. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I'll just try and point out some of the things that I really like on this. The Live at Kent Cove 74 and then Kent Cove 74. There's 6 tracks that are labeled that, but 3 of them have this little asterisk on them. And if you read the liner notes, that means that it was recorded at a different time. I actually didn't really understand. To differentiate 2 separate recordings at the same venue in the same year, this symbol indicates that it was a Devo full band performance, and without it indicates it was the band's poetry night performance. So what does that mean? I don't know what the poetry night was, but apparently the whole band wasn't there. But that poetry night performance, which includes Fraulein, Midget, and My Lai Mama, and then the death of Lieutenant Casanova. That one has been circulating. That's kind of a famous recording in the Devo live recordings out there. That's been circulating as like an unknown 1974 show for at least since I've been in them, so at least since 2004. And the quality of that one, despite being a soundboard, was always really muffled and you could barely understand anything that they were saying. But it sounds phenomenal on this release. They obviously went directly back to the master recording on that, and it just sounds great. I mean, it's probably some of the worst sounding stuff on here, which says a lot for the rest of it, because the words are crisp and clear. You can hear all the lyrics. There's banter between the songs. What really annoys me is that I forget the order it goes in. I think Lieutenant Casanova. No, I think Fraulein is first. Well, I think they're in order, actually. So you got Fraulein and then Midget. No, you have Fraulein, then Casanova, and then Midget. So they're not only are they out of order on here, they're split across 3 separate sides, whereas you should have just put them together as one performance. I don't know why they did that. They also split up the other Kent Cove recording. So you got Private Secretary and Pig's Waddle there. And then, oh gosh, I don't even know. Oh, Androgyny. And I don't know what order those are supposed to be in either. But I think those are some of the highlights of this, because Death of Lieutenant Casanova is a pretty funny song when you can actually understand the lyrics. And then Fraulein is, you know, they play that a lot in the 70s, in 70 up all the way through 77, I think. And then Midget going into My Lai Mama, which is really cool because the old recording out there did not have My Lai Mama, but on here it really flows great. And Devo loves to do that, you know. They have a few songs where it's like Gut Feeling going into Slap Your Mammy, Smart Patrol, and Mr. DNA. So it's kind of like that, where it's almost a continuation of the same song, and it really, I think it makes Midget even better. And Midget is one of those songs where it was on Hardcore Devo, and it's been heard a lot, but they don't really play it that often. I want to say they played it at the Hardcore Devo shows that they did about 10 years ago. but it's a really well-known song, but nobody's ever heard that My Lai Mama that comes after it, and it really makes the song, in my opinion. But the other Kent Cove show, you got Private Secretary, which is great because up until I think last year, there was no known recording of Private Secretary. There was that recording of the 1973 show where it's just, you get about 30 seconds of it because it's all cut up. There's a video recording of that, but this recording sounds great, and it's the full song. That was one of the standouts to me when that last year, I think it was Bob Lewis released on YouTube a recording of the 1974 Kent State show. And that one started with Private Secretary, and it just blew me away. Private Secretary is such a cool song. If you're into old Devo stuff, the average person might not think so. But, and then Androgyny, that also was only first heard on that 1974 show, but it sounds way better here. And then Pig's Waddle, that another same story with that one. That's a pretty good one. Androgyny is kind of grating, but Pig's Waddle is pretty cool and pretty surprisingly high energy for 1974 Devo, which was really down tempo on a lot of this stuff. I don't know, some of this, Nutty Buddy, 1976 recording, that's really cool for me because Nutty Buddy is one of my favorite songs of theirs, and there is not a great recording of it. They did perform it at the Miracle Witness Hour show in May of '77, but it wasn't on the vinyl. So as far as I know, Nutty Buddy has never been officially released on anything. And this one sounds great, just like the rest of this. That's another live one. A lot of the standouts in here are the live versions, but all the demo stuff just sounds like crystal clear. It's kind of crazy. I don't know what the restoration process was like, but I think he was working on it for years and years. There's some weird stuff. Boogie's Industrial Death. I don't think I didn't recognize that as anything. Bicentennial Birthday, same with that. Some of these are cut off. I think Bicentennial Birthday kind of gets cut off at the end. I don't know if that was just part of the original recording or what they did there. Hugh Boone Stomp is that song kind of has a weird history where it's I believe it's on the hardcore releases. Let me look. Yeah. I'm 90% sure it's on the hardcore releases, but if not, there has been a demo out there for years, and they hardly ever performed it live, but then they also recorded it in the 90s when they did the South Park album, which is kind of crazy. And on the South Park version, there's a saxophone, which is not an instrument you would normally associate with Devo, but on this recording back in '75 or whenever it is, there's a saxophone on it. So it's just funny to me that they eventually brought that song back. But it's a really great recording. It sounds totally different than the one that's on the hardcore release. Yeah, I don't know. I've only listened through this once, and it's I enjoyed every minute of it. And then you get to the end and you get that 45. And on here, they're just labeled as Untitled Montage, Harlan Hall, Untitled Montage, Harlan Hall. And then Harlan Hall again, and then Greenwood. I believe, I wish I could remember. I believe the very first one, this Exhibit A, so side A of the 45 track number 1, is just the instrumental version of Beulah, which, as far as I know, has only been heard on the Mongoloid Years 1975 show. You had Beulah into Jocko Homo. Beulah is kind of a really kind of down-tempo, slow song that I like quite a bit, but they later turned it into the song Jesus, which that was in 1980 when they were doing the Freedom of Choice tour. They would come out beforehand and be their own opening act, and they called themselves Dove, the Band of Love, and they would sing 3 or 4 songs about Jesus and loving the Lord, and it was pretty funny, and it was kind of like a thinly veiled disguise. They didn't really pretend too hard, but they reused that Beulah as Jesus, which is kind of funny because it was kind of if I remember, it's kind of a sexual song, and they just kind of replaced the word Beulah with Jesus. But on here, it's just the instrumental version. So I don't know if that predates. It says 1975. I don't know if that predates the recording with the lyrics, if it's just supposed to be an instrumental, or if they wrote it and then eventually just threw some lyrics on top of it or whatever. The other stuff on here I don't recognize at all. It's just kind of weird, more instrumental stuff. I wish there was more I could say about the individual tracks. I need to listen to this a few more times, but suffice to say, it's like basically a dream come true to have this release. And it was a limited vinyl thing that they said it's never going to be repressed, and then very quickly after they're like, oh, we're going to put out a CD, which is great, and then we're going to put it out on vinyl again, but it's just going to be a standard triple album, not this whole box set thing, which is fine. I think I'm not a big fan of limited releases. I'm not one of those people that's going to be upset because I bought a limited release and then, they put it out. I think more people need to hear this stuff because a lot of work went into this. And it's probably the last demo, the last officially released demos we'll ever have from Devo, if I had to guess. This is kind of like the scraps that were left over that they found. And I really hope that Futurismo keeps putting out live recordings, because as far as I know, I think there's still a lot of those in the archives. And it's just a matter of, have they deteriorated to a point where they can't be saved? But, these days with all the AI enhancements and restoration techniques, like it's kind of crazy what they can do. But this stuff, despite being like from probably rougher sources and a wide variety of sources, it sounds so much better than the hardcore stuff. And those were 4-track demo recordings that probably the best source you can get for demos from that era. And it makes me wish that they could go back and redo those 1990 releases with the technology they have now. But it is what it is. It's kind of appropriate, like the tape hiss and everything. It's hardcore Devo. It's you're not expecting polished stuff here. This was their punk era, and I don't know. It's kind of appropriate, but I'm just really, really amazed by the work that they did on this. And from following the Facebook groups that are out there and stuff, people were really excited about this. I believe they're doing like restorations of video stuff now. Like they've put out an HD version of, oh gosh, is it The Men Who Make the Music? I forget. There's their first film from 1976, whatever that's called. There's an HD version of that out there now, and I think they're redoing some of the old scans of those things. So maybe we'll get a new music video compilation in the future. That'd be cool. I don't know how you put out, like, when you put it on Blu-ray. We're kind of past the era of put out a music video DVD, So maybe something like that can hit streaming, or maybe it can be used in a documentary or something like that. But I just wanted to give some appreciation to Futurismo Records because, I saw an interview with him at the devotional this year, and the guy was clearly a huge Devo fan. And I don't think he started this label to just put out Devo stuff, because they put out a lot of different artists, but it's clear that you know, Devo is where his heart lies, and without Futurismo, I don't think a lot of these things would happen. It kind of annoys me that they're a British label, and so everything they put out is super expensive. But that is what it is, and really vinyl prices these days are insane. I remember 10 years ago when these hardcore Devo releases came out, it was like $55, and I'm like, I would never pay $55 for a triple vinyl release. And these days, that's bare minimum. If you're going to release something with 3 discs, you're looking at $70, $80, I think. So I don't really have a problem with the price, but I could see how that would turn people off. But that's why the CD version's coming out. And yeah, that's about all I got to say.